O Jesus, God enamored of humanity, soften my heart to your goodness and purity. Make me feel the beating of your love and rest in you. Audio from the book He and I by Gabrielle Bossis. One cannot love God without knowing Him, without contemplating Him, without having a certain idea of what He is, of what His greatness and His goodness are. Just as it is not possible to draw near to Him without expressing our feelings and asking for His help. This depends on the very nature of prayer, on the need for recollection, for reflection, for the sacramental life, and especially for the Eucharist. It is furthermore necessary that we detach ourselves from ourselves, that we free ourselves from all selfishness. It is indispensable that we subject our spirit to God in humility and our body through mortification. This is the part that belongs to sacrifice in the Christian life. And need I say that our love would not be sincere if it did not lead us to fulfill the will of God in all things, and according to our strength. Consequently, if it did not extend to our neighbor, to you who are grounded in the will of God, in the sanctification of all humanity. A spirit of prayer and recollection is required, of humility and courage, of self-denial, trust, charity, and zeal. For it is impossible to conceive of holiness without all these virtues, which are nothing more than the conditions, the exercise or the fruits of love. Now then, in the manuscript I comment upon, all these points are manifest again and again in a very marked way. And it would be quite easy to group the texts, thus composing a kind of treatise or an itinerary of the soul ascending to God. The exposition would be readily methodical, yet it seemed better in this edition to follow a chronological order, thereby avoiding any appearance of pedantry. It was also necessary to limit ourselves to reproducing rather brief passages, and not too many, so as not to increase the cost of the little book. There were already many people who had knowledge of this writing, having received it simply as a means of knowing God better. They found in its reading light and peace. As it is written in the Gospel, I bless you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, for you chose to hide these things from the wise and the prudent, to reveal them to the little ones. Man 11:25. Note reference to the edition of the first volume of ELEO that appeared in the author's lifetime without her name. It gathers a compilation of texts selected chronologically from her notebooks, but incomplete. It is a beautiful and astonishing story of a soul, also hers, told to us in the two small books titled He and I. The first appeared 2 years ago, and soon gathered a circle of fervent readers. The second is about to be published and is no less rich, no less moving. Now that the fact of her death releases the author from the secret that discretion imposed upon her in life, we may speak the name of the anonymous writer, not the author, as we shall soon see why. who penned those pages ablaze with sublime love, those thoughts so often filled with supernatural truth. Her name was Gabrielle Bossis. Towards the end of her earthly existence, she was a lady of the provinces, of advanced age, having been born in 1874, yet by all accounts of those who knew her, she had preserved an extraordinary youth of spirit and a graceful demeanor. By habit, she dwelt in Nantes, or in some other small village upon the banks of the Loire. By habit, we say, because her life had been somewhat itinerant for the most unexpected of reasons. Educated in a bourgeois milieu, for her father had been in the good old days a landowner by profession, Gabrielle Bossis, the youngest of 4 children, long remained a shy, silent, withdrawn girl who preferred solitude to the laughter of her peers. Could it be that, even then, she was beginning to live an extraordinary experience that would shape her entire life? In any case, she must have had a very good reason to decline every marriage proposal, and nothing prevents us from thinking that this reason was of the most intimate order. They also say she possessed special gifts for those ornamental arts to which our grandmothers devoted themselves: embroidery, painting, illumination, music, and even, more rarely, sculpture. None of this would surpass the talents of many young women of good society in the traditional provinces of France at the dawn of this century. By chance, Gabriella discovered yet another gift, that of playwright. She wrote for a patronage in Anjou one of those plays which unite refined taste with perfect morality and often provoke smiles, yet are far more difficult to compose than to criticize. Since the experiment succeeded, Gabriella composed others, many others, all of which earned the warm reception and friendship of an ever-growing public. Every whispered word, every pause, every breath carries us deeper into a devotional dialogue with the heart of the divine. And so it was that her renown surpassed the bounds of the province. Leaving Nantes and its surroundings, Gabriella went to mount her works in various cities of France, and later abroad, in Belgium, Italy, Morocco, even in Canada, and even in Palestine. The gentle author of plays for patronages became a great traveler, and it was in these conditions that she continued until the end her inner experience. A famous phrase of Henry Bergson comes to mind when he said, "Great mystics have generally been men and women of action, endowed with a higher common sense." This saying applies perfectly to Gabrielle Bossis, because at the same time that she performed vaudevilles from Kairouan to the Rocky Mountains, she lived an extraordinarily intense spiritual life. Like the greatest mystics, she could have repeated the word of St. Paul, "I no longer live, but Christ lives in me." Do I dare confess it? The fact is, I am deeply moved by the admirable balance between a facet that smiles at the public devoted to entertaining them honestly, and another facet intimately devoted to contemplation. Certainly, we rightly admire the mystic who locks himself in his cell and, wrapped in his cowl, perseveres in an arduous experience like no other. For religious men and women to follow God, remove from their path all the countless obstacles that the world offers. But a man or woman at the same time, humanly close to us, and in circumstances similar to our own, who manages to rise to the inaccessible summit where God reveals himself to his chosen, is something even more admirable. Gabrielle Bossis was without a doubt a true mystic, and the two little volumes of LEO relate, almost like a verbatim transcript, what she received in the course of a face-to-face relationship with Jesus Christ. Such intimate diaries are not rare. In our time, several have appeared, among them some very extraordinary ones, like that of Lucia Cristina, that of Sister Josefa Menendez, that of Isabel Lasor, so affecting in its simplicity. Those pages gathered under the title Cum Clamore Valido. And the famous autobiography of the gentle Thérèse of the child Jesus of Lisieux crowns this entire collection like a diadem. None of these works can leave a Christian unmoved, because the dialogue of a soul with God is at once unique and exemplary. For each one of those favored with these gifts, it is something exclusive that addresses the deepest part of the being. But all who read what they have written can hear in their own soul the echo of the divine words. The texts of Gabrielle Bossis appear to us as the words of Jesus himself, heard by the mystic and immediately set down in writing. To what extent can we admit that Christ himself spoke to this person of our time, and that his words contain the truth? Often, those who receive such favors are assailed by doubt, and they ask themselves again and again if they have not been mere playthings of pride or of their own imagination. To this question that Gabriella herself asked, the inner voice replied with admirable wisdom, "Do you doubt that it is I? Then act as though it were so." 25th of August, 1937. And on another occasion, "And even if these words came from your own nature, am I not the one who created that nature? Must you not refer everything back to me?" This was, without doubt, the best of all answers. And it is this that makes such an impression on the reader of these texts, prompting us to reflect on the value of this experience. Of Gabrielle Bossis, it was never said that she had visions, ecstasies, or startling manifestations. She was neither seer nor stigmatist. In appearance, she resembled any other ordinary woman, a gentle lady of advanced years who loved youth, danced, acted in the theater, and smiled upon all. And yet, she heard within her words that sound with the resonance of the most sublime supernatural truth, an authentic echo of Christ. For such is the impression one has when reading the Him and I. As the early Christians said, in that little work one breathes the sweet fragrance of Christ. Nothing forced, nothing excessive, nothing that violates human nature or attempts to carry it beyond its strength. True, there is there a repeated and fervent call to interior discipline, to asceticism, to the effort to master the self, but it remains profoundly human. In the second volume, above all, the mystical soul, having overcome the first obstacles to drawing near to God, gives forth a tone of simple, joyful fullness, of serenity and love, that in many passages joins it with the great masters of spiritual literature. The Abbé Bremond would have delighted in it greatly. That Christ in person spoke to this soul, no mere reader can affirm by his own authority. Yet one thing is certain, this soul lived in God, and sheds upon us a little of his light. October 1950.